Good afternoon and welcome to MedTech Crossroads. We're glad that you're here. Today is episode 126, Friday, November 4th, 2022. And in our new format, we're going to touch on upcoming events in the local and national ecosystem. Then on recent FDA news, we're always scouring the FDA news feeds to bring you what seems interesting to those who are in the medical and life science product development and care delivery spectrum, and those who help them get there. Today and in upcoming weeks, we got the opportunity to be at the MedHealth Summit on Tuesday, November 1st, and we did a bunch of on-site recording along with a couple of other podcasting groups. And so we're pleased to bring you some interviews that we performed during the MedHealth Summit. Today we're going to bring the leader of MedHealth, Stacey Frankovich, to you. Chris Hemphill and I interviewed her at the summit live. We'll get to that in just a minute. And here's just a little bit about the news we're going to be covering today. FDA is tracking device shortages. I don't know that we knew that they changed the laws. There was actually an addition that Congress made to federal law to require tracking of certain device types and for manufacturers to report shortages. This to combat future pandemics where we might not have enough of the things that we need. There's still things being added to that list, and that's going to be ongoing, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Also this, infant head shaping pillows. Just got the boot from FDA. We'll talk about that momentarily. But first, upcoming events in our local and national ecosystem. November 7th and 8th. You know that opioids are a big deal, but what about devices for treatment and combating opioid use disorders? Well, scan that QR code. FDA is running a joint public workshop that you can attend November 7th and 8th, and that will be online only, and you can get to it through that QR code. The 7th through the 9th, we've been telling you about this for a little while now, the Combination Products Summit in Columbus, Ohio. And folks from FDA are going to be there. The director of the Office of Combination Products and the Associate Director for Policy for the Office of Combination Products. You can get office hours. If you are working on a combination product device, you wouldn't want to bring the case specifics to them and ask them to override whoever it is that's working on the project. But if you have questions that are more generic about how combination products are cleared or how to navigate certain things in a more generic sense, if you're signed up for this conference, you can get office hours with them, 15 minutes on their calendar to talk face-to-face. Doesn't get any better than that. Scan the QR code to go to the Combination Products Summit. November 14th and 15th, Data Science and Artificial Intelligence Summit hosted by Midas. The Weil Institute told us about that. Looks like it's going to be sponsored by Spark, AMS, General Dynamics, and Rocket Companies. And then on November 14th through 17th, we're going to be at that. Into Being will be at this. Medica in Dusseldorf, Germany, along with Michigan Economic Development Corporation, who is putting together yet another trade delegation to represent the state of Michigan. Medica is one of the largest exhibitions of new medical devices in the world, and we're excited to bring you some reporting from that towards the end of November. November 15th. This is a really important one. This is a new one that we're listing this week. It's a virtual public workshop, CDRH Industry Basics, Understanding Risk with Medical Devices. This is one that, based on what we saw on the invitation, would make sense for anybody involved in medical device development. If you're an investor, if you're a startup CEO, if you're an engineer, if you're a mentor. In our business at Into Being, we're often doing risk education for our startups when we're working with them on the product development process. FDA is doing some of that education right here for free Tuesday, November 15th. If you want to understand how risk factors into medical device development, I think this would be a good one to go to. November 15th. Then on November 17th, medical extended reality. I guess we're not calling it virtual reality anymore. It's probably augmented reality, applications and challenges. It's a lecture by Ryan Beams, who is a physicist and program coordinator for the Office of Science and Engineering Laboratories for CDRH, for the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. So if you're interested in the nexus of VR technology and healthcare, this would be a good place to show up. November 23rd. Oh, and PowerPoint completely gave us a great time there. Ann Arbor Spark is hosting the Tech Homecoming. You probably can't read it on the right side of the screen there, but the Tech Homecoming is a time when people are coming back for Thanksgiving into town. It's going to be a job fair of sorts. There's going to be an event prior on the 16th that Amy Sell is going to be hosting for development of resumes. And then on the 23rd, November 23rd, scan the QR code to get connected. There will be this Tech Homecoming where companies and job seekers will be connecting. What a great opportunity. On December 6th, the FDA's Broad Agency Announcement Day. This isn't about getting clearance from FDA. This is about partnering with the agency on the kinds of initiatives that they're interested in moving forward. So if you have great ideas and you want to help FDA make regulatory science better, this is when they make their agency-wide broad agency announcements for research and development to support regulatory science and innovation. Then on December 7th and 8th of this year, boy, I know a few people I would like to go to this one. The FDA Clinical Investigator Training Course 2022. Topics covered: design and conduct of clinical trials, determining appropriate endpoints in clinical trials, efforts to advance diversity in trial populations, statistical evaluation of clinical trials, innovative trial designs, interpretation of the investigator brochure, and clinical trial quality. And you're now going to ask, Gene, why are you spending time on this one? I mean, we've got plenty of academics who know how to create clinical trials. And I will spend a moment here because many of our innovators coming from academic backgrounds do know how to design clinical trials for one purpose, and that purpose is research. It's to be able to write papers. I cannot tell you the number of times that in our business we've run into innovators, academics, who think they know how to design a clinical trial for FDA clearance. And sadly, the requirements are drastically different. They're drastically different for what FDA expects for clearance versus what is necessary to publish in your favorite worldwide journal. So again, if you are a mentor, if you're an investor, and you have or a CEO of a startup, and you have a team that says, we're about to do a clinical trial, I would really like you to make a point to let them know about this one, December 7th and 8th. Scan the QR code. If they think they understand how to make a clinical trial, and they come from an academic background, I will humbly suggest that they probably do not, and this would be a great event to go to. Not like we have opinions here. January 23rd and 24th, Social Determinants of Health Summit. This in San Diego at the Marriott Marquis, January 23rd and 24th. This is, I think, of interest to a lot of us in the community. Just at the recent MedHealth Summit, there was a lot of discussion about social determinants of health, about population health, understanding how different demographics. We're going to air on a future week Dr. Levy's interview about the Phoenix Project coming out of Wayne State, how they're looking at these demographic questions that trace different parts of the population. And I think this question of social determinants of health, closely related, of great interest to many in the community. That is in San Diego. Get out there to sunny California, January 23rd and 24th of 2023. Also in January and February of 2023. Also in January and February of 2023, Our friends at Fast Forward Medical Innovation and the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Michigan are hosting Biomedical Innovation 101. They are having a series of webinars, and here are the dates: January 18th, 25th, February 1st, February 8th, February 15th, and February 22nd, on different topics for research commercialization. An introduction, then one on drug discovery, diagnostics, digital health, biomedical device development. Myself and our project manager Adrian Harris will be at that one. Then the next steps in commercialization resources. So if you want more information on that, scan the QR code and get connected for those webinars coming up in January and February. With that, it's time for FDA and industry news from the local and national ecosystem. All of this today, 2 news items. FDA is tracking device shortages. See what's missing. And infant head-shaping pillows. Let's take a look. First of all, and this came from the COVID-19 pandemic, medical device shortages during the COVID-19 public health emergency. And if you say the pandemic is winding down, we're really thankful. It turns out that something good is coming out of it, and there doesn't have to be COVID-19 to make this a good thing. It turns out that the FDA publishes a shortage list to provide transparency to the American public, particularly those who use or purchase medical devices. I found this interesting. The list fulfills a statutory obligation under Section 506J of the FD&C Act. And quietly, on March 7th of 2020, the CARES Act, Section 3121, amended the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act by adding Section 506J to the statute. That's all your legalese for the day. But here's the thing. It gave FDA the authority and the responsibility to help to prevent or mitigate future device shortages. If you remember the problems that we had with ventilators and masks and other types of PPE, this is intended to help remedy this. We'll see how this holds up over time, but it seems like a decent idea. And it says that during or in advance of a public health emergency, it requires FDA to keep track of the device shortages that are going on for particular device classes. And it requires FDA to establish and maintain a publicly available database of the devices that the FDA has determined to be in shortage, as well as notifying people about devices which have been discontinued. So if there's a silver lining coming out of what we experienced with all the device shortages in the last couple of years, we're now going to get an updated list of what is happening. And FDA hasn't stopped updating that list. The most recent updates are both from September as well as October, and most recently, October 31st. Let's start with the ones that are not very surprising. Gloves and ventilators. There's still a relative shortage of these, or one that has the potential to persist. So in other words, if the pandemic were to really re-ramp up, we would still have a problem here. Less well known are these. General purpose reagents for in vitro diagnostic tests, including pipette tips. We saw pipette tips listed numerous times. That's current as of September. Microbial nucleic acid storage and stabilization devices. Absorbent applicators. Transport culture medium. Tubes, vials, systems, serum separators for blood collection. Relatively recently updated. Anticoagulant vacuum sample tubes. Really basic stuff here. Vascular access flush saline. Most recently, and these were the news items this week, FDA added breast biopsy grid plates, localization trays, surgical needle guides, specialty magnetic resonance coils, as well as tracheostomy tubes, whether they're cuffed or not cuffed. Along with this, FDA noted what one might do about this shortage, and this is where the advice ranges from helpful to sort of obvious. On tracheostomy tubes, the agency said that you can actually clean, sanitize, and reuse tracheostomy tubes 5 times for pediatric sizes and 10 times for adult sizes. They actually provide more guidance along with that to be able to do that in a safe manner. Relatively helpful information. On breast biopsy plates, unfortunately, the recommendation was pretty much limited to postpone those surgeries and call the company to see when they can get you more plates. But in the aggregate, we think this is a pretty cool thing that FDA is trying now to keep tabs and is by statute required to keep tabs on device shortages that could potentially be of interest to those in the industry. And for us who are providing healthcare, who are investing in or mentoring startups towards needs in the marketplace, while these are relatively short-term needs, it is worth knowing what kinds of devices are being tracked and what sorts of things are felt to be important and of note to the agency. Next up, infant head shaping pillows. To prevent or treat any medical condition, FDA says no, these are not doing anything to our knowledge. Scan the QR code if you want to see FDA's notification, but if you go today and do a Google search, you're going to find any number of infant head shaping pillows. These are just pillows with different shapes that are claiming to reshape your baby's head. And I guess if you have some kind of a flat head syndrome, that might seem really tempting. But the FDA says this. They say the FDA is not aware of any demonstrated benefit with the use of infant head shaping pillows for any medical purpose. The use of head shaping pillows can create an unsafe sleep environment for infants and may contribute to the risk of suffocation and death. If you own an infant head shaping pillow, throw it away. Do not donate or give it to anyone else. Now, what's interesting about this is the agency isn't saying that infant head shaping is impossible. In fact, they have cleared caps, helmets, headbands for use as a cranial orthosis device intended to improve cranial symmetry or shape in infants and toddlers. Reshaping is a thing, and there have been lots of projects where reshaping all sorts of parts of a developing body happen with some regularity. It's just that a pillow lying on the bed with the baby placed on top of it is not necessarily going to do that. In fact, there are dangers associated with that. Leaving things in an infant sleeping area does have dangers associated with it. And that's why the FDA is recommending that if anybody has these, just get rid of them. But this is always a great example of claims. When we bring news items, we want to bring them for a reason that is of interest to our community. And here's the thing. When you go to the agency and you say, or rather when you go to the market and you say, I want to sell you this product and it does this thing, that is what FDA busies itself about monitoring and ensuring that the devices are safe and efficacious for use. So when you go out to the market and you say, this device treats a disease state or condition, and you don't hew to what the FDA expects you to do, this is the sort of thing that's going to happen. So we can I expect in coming weeks to see all the major retailers pulling these off, or at least relabeling them. Now it's going to be a comfort sleep pillow. It's not going to be a head reshaping pillow. If you are aware, though, of anything that has caused a problem with this or any other medical device, I want to remind you of FDA's MedWatch program, the FDA Safety Information and Adverse Event Reporting Program. Anybody can go there and report problems with medical devices. And it's really a service to the community when you do. So just remember, that's always there if you're aware of any problems with devices on the market. Well, and that brings us to our last item for today. We will come back right after this for any questions, comments, event announcements that you want to bring to us. But we were at the MedHealth Summit this past Tuesday, and in partnership with Healthcare Now Radio, Meeting of the Minds, and MedTech Crossroads, we made a podcasting setup par excellence at Ford Field. And we got to sit down with any number of the speakers and presenters, notable attendees at the event. And we're able to sit down with each of them and talk about either their presentations or their experience at the event or what was going on in their lives and events and businesses. So today, we're going to bring you, of course, the manager of MedHealth, Stacey Frankovich. She sat down with Chris Hemphill, who is the host of the Meeting of the Minds podcast, and myself at Ford Field in Detroit. And here was our interview. Good afternoon. I'm Gene Parunak, host of MedTech Crossroads.
I'm Chris Hemphill. I am Director of Commercial Intelligence at Wobot Health and co-hosted for Meeting of the Minds Wobot's podcast today.
And we're here with Stacey Frankovich, who is the Director of MedHealth and the person responsible for this whole day, the MedHealth Summit here at Ford Field, in person for the first time in how many years now? First in 3 years?
Almost 3.
Wow.
Almost 3, yep.
That's amazing. And a great event, great turnout.
Yes, yes.
What are our numbers today?
We're, I believe, a little over 150.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep, great turnout, and we have more coming because we have our matchmaking session this afternoon.
Some speed dating happening.
Some speed dating and some matchmaking happening this afternoon.
So tell us more about what is happening today and why it's so important.
Sure. So the MedHealth Summit, I think, is really important to bring the ecosystem together. So we have partners here that are from research institutes, we have investors, we have health systems, we have entrepreneurial support organizations, we have economic developers, all here coming together to support the MedTech ecosystem. Michigan has a thriving MedTech ecosystem, and they need that whole collaboration to pull together to help them get these technologies to market.
I was actually blown, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm up here just seeing how many people came together for this event. How did you coordinate all these different payers and all these different groups to come together to be a part of this?
Well, it's been a long work in progress, but we do have a very robust steering committee made up of payers, providers, private industry, entrepreneurs, all of the sectors I just mentioned, who certainly help with getting speakers and pulling people together. But MedHealth really pulls the ecosystem together. The innovators start here with MedHealth, and we help to push them out to the resources that exist. We try to help, for lack of a better term, Sherpa them up the huge mountain of bringing a technology to market. So we really try to partner with all of the organizations in the state and beyond. We are a cross-border collaboration, by the way, so we do try to partner with all of our organizations to ensure that we can get entrepreneurs to the right place at the right time.
I think it's so cool because, when you talk about bringing new technology to market, it's important, but then you tend to get the product companies and the VCs and everything like that. What's so unique about MedHealth is not only have I seen, startups from the local ecosystem here, but also you've got the healthcare systems, and like you alluded to, Chris, you got the payers and others who show up. And the discussion seems to be about things like community health. It's about things like not just did we get a successful company out there, which is really important, but also are we taking care of communities as the ultimate end being met?
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to some of the entities or others who are here representing sort of that end goal?
Yeah, so, when it comes to med technology, you can talk high tech, like devices that are going to be used, hip replacements, knee replacements, but you can also talk about maybe a little bit lower tech, applications and things that can be used at the community level. So our keynote speaker earlier spoke very, very well about a lot of the health disparities that we see. And it's not for us to go into a community and tell community what you need to do to be healthier. It's for us to empower communities, to empower each other, and to share within their community what technologies exist, what things can help them improve their lives and improve their health and well-being. So MedHealth really wants to help facilitate some of that community service, if you will, and maybe empower some of those community leaders to learn what is happening in healthcare technology, but then for maybe us in the background to flood the zone with the resources that they need. So the community leader is really the one with the feet on the streets telling their community, here, we can try this can help. And then we need our health systems, our payer systems, our economic developers, all those folks to come in with those resources so they can actually get it done. And we have to educate people on what technologies exist. If you need to track your blood pressure, for example, or if you have diabetes and there are better options for you to manage your diabetes through an application or something that you can do to track at home, we need to get people educated and understand what's being developed to support their communities and support their health. So I hope that was a very roundabout answer, but
it kind of it leads into like you referenced Dr. Philip Levy, the keynote speaker. His presentation was very heavily centric on like what we can learn about Detroit from a population health perspective, and then the data that surrounds that. And it just made me curious about like this conference and all these technology players and various groups here. What are some of the underappreciated elements that you're trying to help surface about Detroit?
I don't think people really understand just how bad it is. And I don't want to focus on the negativity. COVID really exposed some wounds. I mean, we can't turn a blind eye to that. But I think what's happening is when we think about MedTech, I'll go back to what I said a minute ago. When we think about MedTech, people think high tech, being used by the practitioners. And I think what is underestimated is how impactful something considered maybe lower tech, like an application or an at-home aid of some kind, or parallel bars for home healthcare workers to go in and help with physical therapy. I mean, these seem pretty easy, but we also have an investment community that maybe doesn't get how important an application can be to a full community. So I think, and not to speak poorly of the investment community, because we love them and we need them in this space, but I think we need to also understand where we can create impact, quickly with an application or something, some type of app that can be used at home, or with some type of home health aid so that people can age in place, or home hospital. And I think we need to pay a lot of attention to that to increase the impact to build those healthier communities.
That's interesting, because I think that is the kind of thing that's happening out here. I was talking with somebody out in the hall, and they were like, they're a small company, right? And they got their product to market, and that's great and everything. But hearing some of the discussions today about community health, they were like, whoa, like our product could already help with that. And there's a conversation there that wouldn't have happened before today.
Right.
And so those connections getting made.
And even with Dr. Levy talking about what we know about data, we need to use data. And we're told all the time, we have all this data, we don't know what to do with it. We literally have people coming to us saying, can you help us find somebody that can manage this data for us? Well, what Dr. Levy's trying to do is take that data and be able to make practical use of it so that we know how to deploy resources. We know what communities specifically need, not just a guess, but we know what they specifically need because we've got that data. So really critical part of the whole conversation that doesn't get, it's not sexy, it doesn't get as much attention as a new fancy device, but it's super important. It's really important in addressing some of the issues.
As a data scientist, I do take offense to being told that it's just entirely not sexy.
It is. You know what? It is. I think it's really cool and sexy, but that's just me.
Somebody's got to do it. It
Right.
matters.
Right.
As the child of a statistician, I also feel like this matters. So.
Isn't it? I mean, it's important. And think of what we can do. You all know data is being collected every minute of every day on all of us. If we can use this to do something good, let's do it. Let's work towards that.
That's really important. Well, other than taking a well-earned break, hopefully after the very successful summit, what does the future hold?
Well, the future holds, we are currently working on an EDA grant that we've had for about a year now. So we're going to continue to work on that. And really all that's doing is helping us elevate what MedHealth can do for the state of Michigan and beyond. But we're also working closely with Wayne State University, as Dr. Levy mentioned, on an NSF Engines opportunity, which would be huge. This is a big challenge, but it could be so impactful for how we can deliver healthcare in the future. So we're spending a lot of time on that until the first of the year. And then we are talking about more events because we're finally live. So we're looking at another summit in about a year and a half. We're looking at perhaps a hackathon or some other engagement where we can really try to build some solutions and get some of our next generation founders a little excited about MedTech.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. Well, extremely excited to see these things carry out. And again, being from Atlanta, really happy about how the summit has been really welcoming to folks outside of Detroit as well.
So glad to have you here. Please go back to Atlanta and tell them all about us.
Will
and
do.
Hopefully we can get to Atlanta as well.
Yes, come on
come
down.
and do your podcast there. So.
Stacey, thank you for all of this today, and thanks for being here with Chris and myself and chatting with us for a few minutes.
And thank you for being a sponsor. I'm going to plug that in really quick. Thank you for being a sponsor and for being here to do all of this. Really important conversations today. Thank you.
Well, we're having a lot of fun. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And that was our interview with Stacey Frankovich, Program Director for MedHealth, myself along with Chris Hemphill from the Meeting of the Minds podcast. In upcoming weeks, we're going to treat you to a whole bunch of interviews that we conducted during the MedHealth Summit. We've got Dr. Philip Levy from Wayne State, who is leading the charge in these population health efforts. We've got folks from Homeward, Microsoft, sat down with Mark Ignash from MEDC, Diane Bowie from Project MedTech. We just had a whole bunch of these wonderful interviews. We're looking forward to bringing them to you in future weeks. What a great time, what a great venue there at Ford Field. Second time in Detroit in just as many weeks with community events. So great to see all those things happening. We'll give it just a moment if there's any questions, comments, events you want to tell us about. We would love to hear about it. It's always good to have you here on MedTech Crossroads. We're looking forward to a great fall. I know I'm feeling rejuvenated, being back in person at these events, meeting people, putting two and two together, all the connections and new things that are happening. I hope you're feeling the same way. It's going to be a great fall and winter, and we're looking forward to 2023 coming up in the near future. So with that, I want to thank you for being here today. Have a great, beautiful weekend. Hopefully get some sun's rays while the leaves are still changing color. We will see you next week.